All right, let's dive into the new 2024 D&D Wizard class and compare it to the 2014 5e Wizard class. We just watched the video. We've read all the information that we'll link below. They said right off the top they wanted this class to specifically focus on the versatility and having the most spells. They've expanded the spell list. But Kyle, let's jump into one of the first things right away that changed that I love, which is cantrips at level 1.
Yeah, I mean, there's two features that you get level 1 with a wizard, and I love the wizard subclass, or wizard as a class as a whole. And spellcasting is paramount to the whole class. So changing with the spellcasting feature, you can replace your cantrips on a long rest. A lot of people aren't huge on this. I think it's really makes you much more versatile. I think it's really interesting. And almost as a side note to this feature as well, being able to just use your spellbook as your focus. Love that. Like, super simple, unnecessary change to have it have been pulled from the original. Easy add-in that I think is very evocative of the class.
And this will be the only class that allows you to change a cantrip, and it's just one cantrip every long rest you can swap out, which, yeah, I think it's really fun.
Yeah, it speaks very much to the wizard being adaptable to their situation, to like researching and knowing what they're going up to face, and bringing the right tools for that job, as well as being able to kind of pull in outside of combat for proper social things or exploration, your other pillars of the game, making you a better kind of Swiss Army knife with your spells, which is perfect. In addition to that, at first level, there's the Ritual Adept feature, which is really just shifting a place and positioning of the ritual casting.
We were kind of laughing at this. Yeah, we were like, yeah, it's pretty normal.
Yeah. It seemed unnecessary to make a big call out in the video about it, but apparently people were missing that wizards could ritual cast, and now it is front and center. You can see that every caster can ritually cast with the new rules.
Let's jump to level 2, because now we got Scholar, which, just like you had said kind of off the top, is leaning into this bookish nature of wizards.
The Scholar feature is something that I think the wizards really needed. They needed an expertise. They're supposed to be one of the smarter classes. They're the intelligence-based class, and somehow their skill checks were always beaten by the expertise with the bard, or all these other classes that had these skills that they were champions of, and the wizard didn't have that. And I think this is such a small, easy addition that improves the kind of quality of life and the nature of the class of this character, to give yourself expertise in Arcana, or if you really want to be in nature and understand that world and the world around you, great. I think Arcana and history are going to be the most obvious choices, but the most useful. But I just love it. It's super simple.
Now we jump to 5th level, Memorize, which is on a short rest you can swap out a spell from your spell book. Another really cool way to make this a versatile class, where let's say you just went from exploration into a dungeon where you're going to be wading through levels of baddies or going through traps. I think this is really cool to make the wizard more customizable.
Yeah, exactly. And I want to add one thing. At 3rd level, we do have the wizard subclasses, which we'll jump to after we go through the kind of the base class adjustments. But at the 5th level Memorize spell, in the same way that being able to swap a cantrip, making you that Swiss Army knife, having the right tool for the job, this is the exact same thing with your spells. Knowing that you have something, a dungeon is a perfect example of a very specific situation that you just need to overcome to help your party to fight the baddie, but it's locked away in your spell book, and you throw your hands up and say, well, I would have the best thing in the for this situation. Now you have it.
Can we go to sleep, guys? Just let me long rest, and then we can figure it out.
Let's do away with that. Now you can just swap it on the fly. And I love that, because it's very evocative of this person, this character who has spent years accumulating all this information in this book, and then they can't use it in the moment. Like, that's crazy. And from there, we have a large gap in the wizard, which is not uncommon, even with the original 5e. You get up into a lot of subclass options, and really the big thing with wizards is the spells that you're getting along the way. But jumping ahead to level 18, you get your spell mastery, and the changes with spell mastery. I could see people being rubbed the wrong way with this change, that the chosen spells now have to have a casting time of an action, and counting is always prepared. This limiting things like taking shield or misty step, which is so common, but they were so powerful that there was almost no point to take anything else. Like, you always just took those awesome options. So I don't hate this. I understand it. And I think it'll just hopefully highlight some really interesting other level spells that you can take in place of this. And you can swap those spells out again on a long rest.
Now let's talk about what every wizard gets at their subclass, which is the Savant feature. They've expanded this now into your School of Magic, but they made a couple changes here.
Yeah, right when you get your wizard subclass. So the 4 subclasses that are presented in the 2024 version are the Abjurer, Diviner, Evoker, and Illusionist, aligning with Abjuration, Divination, Evocation, and Illusion schools of magic. Um, at this subclass level, you get this new Savant version, and the old version used to be basically a discount on putting those school spells into your spell book, and it was kind of a nothing feature, realistically. Like it doesn't feel amazing.
They mentioned from their actual plays, no one really did this. It wasn't really accounted for. So yeah, just like you said, kind of didn't really matter.
Yeah. Now it's actually a great feature. You gain access to free spells associated with the school of your subclass, and you each level, and this is where it kind of get a little confusing. In the article on D&D Beyond, it has different wording here than what Jeremy Crawford said in the video on YouTube. The way he said is every level you get a new spell of that school of magic, and I thought that's a crazy amount of free spells you're getting. However,
we think he misspoke, though. Yeah,
we think he misspoke. I think the writing in the article makes more sense. To which they say you get a new spell of your school of magic when you unlock a new level of spell slot. So drastically less, but I think more balanced, and I still think very evocative, a very useful tool.
Now we'll run through these subclasses pretty quickly. Let's start with the School of Magic for Abjuration, the Abjurer, the one that focuses on defensive magic, not only of themselves, but then later to others.
Yeah, exactly. And the Abjuration Wizard was one of my favorites in the original. Getting your Arcane Ward, I think, is a super cool, unique feature, and makes you a little tankier. A little bit, you're still a wizard, but a little bit of extra buffer. And it's only gotten a little bit better, I think, in this version, as you can have the same feature. Obviously, you're still being able to buffer yourself with this Arcane Ward. However, you can refill it directly with a bonus action, just burning a spell slot to infuse it with more power and basically giving yourself more health, essentially. It's almost like a temporary hit points. One of the other cool things that they've made to adjust this feature is any resistances, also vulnerabilities, so keep that in mind, but resistances and immunities that you as the character have are also applied to your ward. I think that's really, really smart, because it didn't ever make sense. Say you're a tiefling who has fire resistance, standing in a fireball, your ward gets eaten, but you still have the resistance. Now it's a more symbiotic element of yourself, and I like that a lot.
One part I was wondering here, Kyle, Jeremy kind of spoke about it, and I wondered what was true. Was he mentioned, okay, now if you put the Arcane Ward over someone else, is it their vulnerabilities that then gets put into that ward, or is the wizard who casts it? The way he spoke about it was like the one it was protecting, it was taking their vulnerabilities, immunities. And I wondered about that. Maybe something when when the text comes out about it, we could read more into, but it was something that I was wondering what was the final truth there.
That's interesting. Like to me, I don't recall this him saying this, but the projected word element I like a lot as a feature. To me, I think it would still rely on the caster's resistances, immunities, vulnerabilities being projected out, because it's still attached to you, rather than pulling from the target, your ally, presumably. However, we'll have to just kind of wait, I guess, until the final wording comes out. I think that is what it is, though. It's going to be based on you as a caster, which I think is you can customize a lot better, because you could cast something on yourself to give yourself a resistance. Fighting a specific color of dragon, you can now give yourself resistance to that damage type, and every time you're projecting, you're making sure those people are covered as well.
It would be very cool. If we jump up to level 10, we got the Spellbreaker feature, which is Counterspell and Dispel are always prepared, and Dispel can be used as a bonus action.
Huge to me. I think that is a really cool feature. Obviously, elements of that in the old version, being able to have them always prepared, but being able to cast Dispel Magic as a bonus action, I think, is huge, because Dispel Magic is such an investment for a risk, for a chance to try and get rid of some effect on the battlefield. Or, I mean, it's less of a risk outside of combat, when you're trying to dispel, elements in a dungeon, say. But in combat, it can always be such like, I could waste my whole action here trying to get rid of this effect, trying to free this person from this thing, and maybe it doesn't work. At least if it's a bonus action, it can easily be kind of dealt with, and like you can still turn and do something with your action if it fails. And if it succeeds, great, you still get to do more.
Well, Kyle, speaking of it failing or trying, they've also changed here. If the spell fails, the slot is not expelled. We've kind of, or expended rather, we've kind of experimented this with our own homebrew game, just with some homebrew rules, but I really like this change as well.
Me too. And I mean, that just speaks very much evocatively to the class of Abjuration, that these are the, preeminent Abjuration spells. The counterspell and dispel magic, you can do them faster, easier, and with less energy expenditure here in terms of spell slots if it doesn't work for whatever reason. I like this class.
Me too. I think it'd be really fun to play. I'm very keen to play this, and one coming up a little later, the Illusionist. We'll get to that quickly. I just wrote down here in my haphazard notes, level 14 spell resistance.
That's, I think, just going to keep exactly as it was in the original class, which is just advantage on saving throws against spells and resistance against spell damage. That was that's the capstone for the Abjuration Wizard in the original version. I think it's porting over exactly as is. At least it's what it sounds like. Huge. That's why this class is one of the major things. Everything as they level up as a wizard just continues to get better. There's never really a feature, especially in this new version, that I'm like, no, I don't love that. I love it all.
Let's go to the Diviner class. In our own game that's airing right now, we stream this campaign. You can check it out. We'll put the playlist below. But one of our players is playing a Diviner, and it's such a fun class. They mentioned here they didn't do much to tweak this or the Evoker just because they're such a beloved class, but they did make some changes, which was, I wrote down, improved Divination Savant. Like we mentioned, that Savant feature goes across all the classes. But at level 10, Kyle, they made some upgrades to Third Eye.
Yeah, Third Eye is a really cool and really evocative feature that was always with this divination wizard. Being able to expand your Third Eye, being able to pull at these different sight-based elements of the game, dark vision, seeing into the ethereal, seeing invisibility, and reading any language was the other feature. And basically what they've done is they've made that a bonus action, and this is something that's been a through line I've seen through a lot of these videos and articles. Shifting things that is just turning on a state into a bonus action makes so much more sense. It makes the game flow faster, and it makes you still being able to utilize the cool elements of your subclass and do whatever you're doing in combat or do this other thing without it being like, okay, that's my turn. Like I just turned on this cool feature that should be synonymous with my class. In this case, as a diviner, being able to see invisibility or granting yourself dark vision if you didn't already have it. These really cool elements that now just gives you that extra bit of movement. One of the other things that they've done is expanding the dark vision range to 120 feet. Very useful. And the see invisibility option allows you to cast the see invisibility spell without using a spell slot. Apparently, Ethereal Sight has been removed from the new version. Not a huge loss, if I'm entirely honest. It would have been very specific moments that comes up. And I really don't think it's a huge loss. If you play in a ghost campaign, that might
maybe. Yeah, maybe. Let's move over to the Evoker class. Again, they said solid subclass. They didn't want to change the identity of this class at all. But now they have Potent Cantrip, which I think is really neat.
Yeah, I mean, same with the Diviner and the Evoker. Both the core of both those classes was really good. Like the greater features in Divination, the Portent feature, there's not much you need to change there. Great feature. With the Evoker, it's all about the Sculpt spell and an improvement to this Potent Cantrip. They swap places in how you get them, but the Potent Cantrip now applying half damage on missed spell attacks. Awesome. Amazing feature.
Love it.
And half on successful saving throws. That's a really, really cool feature. Kind of pickpocketing a little of the Gray's weapon mastery that is coming out in the same new 2024 version for the martial classes. When you miss with an attack, you still deal your strength or dexterity modifier, typically strength, to the target. So just again, you're an evoker. You're just constantly putting out firepower that just can't be ignored, and I like that a lot.
And really just leaning into the identity of the subclass. This is what they do, so they're going to add to it and build up that identity even more.
Yeah, I think one of the only other element to note there is that Sculpt spell does get shifted a little further into the class, as they did say they swap Potent Cantrip and Sculpt spell. I don't think that's a huge loss. Sculpt spell is an incredibly powerful thing. It just means that you'll have to wait an extra level or two before you're able to fireball yourself and your party. but when you get it, still going to be awesome.
Now, last subclass, Illusionist, both one that after we heard these changes, we were like, this would be really, really fun to play.
Yeah. I like the Illusionist in the original, but it just never had a great footing. It never had a great moment that I thought made it shine until you got to the really 14th level Illusory Reality feature. That was a really cool feature. Illusory Self is also a really interesting feature, but it just felt like there was something missing. And I think that they've kind of really hit it right on this new version with improved illusions, replacing improved minor illusion, allowing you to ignore the verbal components of your illusion spells, as well as increasing the range. That to me is really, really, really interesting and really evocative of a cool character only having to kind of, quickly cast something just somatically, but silently, and very kind of tricksterish to their identity.
Making it much more tactical too. You could think of, hiding behind a corner, being able to cast this. I think the range was 60 feet, where everyone else would be limited to 10 feet with some of these certain spells. And yeah, mentioned here as well, minor illusion doesn't count as a cantrip that you'd have to choose. You get that for free.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very, very cool. I think it's really neat.
Yeah, at 6th level, they get a new feature called Phantasmal Creatures, which grants Summon Beast and Summon Fae as always prepared spells. Super cool new spells. They can be cast as illusion spells in a modified version. And again, this was a moment that I thought, as Jeremy Crawford was explaining in the video, got a little muddy in the waters as he was trying to explain it.
Got a little complicated. Yeah.
Essentially, if you cast it as its illusory form, they're not quite as powerful. They basically have half as many hit points, but you could still cast it in its normal conjuration school at the full hit points. So it's kind of, you get the benefits if you're casting it in illusion form based on your illusionist abilities, or you could go for more powerful with the base conjuration style. I think it's just cool to have the option.
And the other difference would be if you cast it where it's that conjuration, it costs a spell slot. And they said, if you're casting it with the illusionist as its background, doesn't cost a spell slot, and you get both of those once a day. So not just one or the other, you get to use both. Yeah, so that's pretty cool. Of each spell, though, pretty neat.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly. Free spells you can never go wrong with, and that's what I'm saying. I like that there are, it's a spell everyone has, but it's a spell that you specifically can modify to fit the better your class and fit your vision here. And lastly, the Illusory Self feature, which comes on a little 10, if I'm not mistaken, you can restore the duplicates that surround you by expending a level 2 spell slot. No action required. Amazing.
Pretty cool. Pretty cool. I just think how many times in combat you could do that. Like, what I've wondered with some of these is, would that cost your reaction to do? They never mentioned for any of these reactions. And so I wondered, on a turn, how many times could you do that? I guess we'll have to wait for the official books to come.
The original was on reaction. You can have your duplicate take a hit for you. And I think they changed, Jeremy Crawford made a mention about changing the wording that it wasn't on the attack, it was on a hit. So it was like a guarantee of a hit. I still think it's a reaction, but again, we'll have to just kind of wait for the official wording. And I still think I like it as a reaction. As a DM, I still think I'd rather use the reaction resource here because it is a very powerful auto miss.
And they kept expanded reality. You can make an illusion real. Their example always is like, there's a cavern. You can make a bridge to cross the cavern. Now it's real. You go across it. Your enemies are chasing you. Oh, it's an illusion now. They fall to their death. Pretty neat. Don't think much changed there, though, if I'm not wrong.
I don't think so either. It's already a really evocative, really interesting ability that I think needs like a really creative mind to come up with. Like, that's a great scenario. That's a great example. But I think there are a lot of interesting ways that you could utilize that in just changing the battlefield, changing the setup of like a lot of different, even social encounters. You could vastly change how you're approaching a social setting, inviting someone into an illusory like mansion and making yourself look a lot more opulent than perhaps you are, or riding into town on illusory, something that would make it more interesting, more evocative. I think there are lots of ways that you could play with it, but it's a great feature. So I'm glad they didn't really mess with it too much.
The last thing, and this pertains exactly to this, is they said they expanded on their glossary entry of guidance with illusions, how it works. I expect that's also like how you detect it, like how does someone fail it, how do they see it. And I just wanted to mention, in case we didn't off the top, with this improved illusion for this entire class, it can also do visual and audible, and it counts as a bonus, which is pretty sweet. So can combine those, whereas previously, you just choose one or the other. So I would love to play this. I think it'd be really fun.
I think so as well. Like I've always loved the wizard as a subclass. It's a classic subclass. And realistically, like part of me was like not let down necessarily looking at this. But because the wizard subclass only has a very few features, I should say the wizard class has very few features. The real boon is the spells. I can't wait till they release some of the information about spells. Like I want to learn so many. What are the changes? What schools? They made a mention that some spells have changed school. I know some healing spells are now abjuration spells instead of evocation. Makes so much more sense that way. I'm just very curious to see some of the new rulings, some of the new ways wizards will be able to adapt and modify these spells with some of these cool features of the subclasses.
And of course, I'm sure more subclasses are on the way. No mention of Bladesinger here, no mention of Dunamancy, Chronomancy, anything like that. But of course, plenty of room to come in the following years.
Yeah, that honestly is a little bit of a detractor for me. I know they wanted to go with 4 subclasses across the board for each of the main classes, but it does feel very odd to miss out on the Necromancer. Like that's such an evocative class. And I know I'm forgetting the other one, the Enchanter, Enchantress. Like that's being missed out here. I know, like obviously Dunamancy, Chronergy, Graviturgy, those are critical role based. Transmutation is another, like where's the Transmuter Wizard? That's a classic one as well. So I wonder, and Bladesinger obviously, I wonder if it's one of those things where they want to maintain the backwards compatibility, that those are just easier just to transfer over, and there weren't going to be that many changes as it stood, just making a 1-to-1. But I do feel like it's a little bit of a misstep to not have all of your schools of magic properly represented by your magic class, your preeminent magic class, as well as the Bladesinger is. So many people love the Bladesinger that it's a little disappointing to not have in the official book. So I am a little disappointed in that, if I'm honest.
It's on my bucket list. I got to play a Bladesinger. Almost did it for our most recent campaign, but I'll have to wait for a different one-shotter campaign in the future. That's all for us covering the Wizard and all the new subclasses, all the changes with 2024 D&D. We're going to do this for, I think, every subclass, or maybe even group them together. But if you like this video, please hit subscribe, hit like, comment any changes you liked or didn't like. And Kyle, we'll see you in the next one.